everyone is doing. It's easy to get lost in a sea of comparison, secret tricks, and promises of overnight success. The long game? That's my approach to business. You gotta show up, you gotta do the work, and there are no quick fixes for long-term success. It takes creativity, it takes strategy, and it takes listening to the voice inside you. I'm a web designer, digital strategist, and energetic thinker, bringing you real-world business building experiences, conversations with creators who are out there doing it now, and ideas to spark the energy in your own business. And along the way, we're gonna have a little bit of fun as well. So thanks for being here, and let's get to today's episode. You're listening to the Long Game Podcast. I'm your host, Sandra Scaiano. 81% of Americans want to write a book. That's really an astounding number, and only 3% of them actually do. This stat is courtesy of my guest today and our conversation on 5 steps to creating a successful business building book. I'm joined today by Lanette Pottle, a book coach and publishing mentor. She teaches female speakers, coaches, and entrepreneurs how to turn their wisdom into authority-building, impact-making books in months, not years. Lanette is the creator of the She Gets Published brand and hosts a podcast by the same name. She's a multi-book Amazon best-selling author and publisher of the international best-selling Light Beamers book series, which in episode 102 of the Long Game Podcast, we go in depth about this book. So you can go back and check that episode out. Lanette has shared her expertise in places like Hay House Radio, she's a TEDx speaker, and she shared the stage with New York Times #1 best-selling author Jack Canfield. So, Lanette, she's got it going on. And, we're business owners here. So we are talking about writing a book that will help propel and promote your business and you as an expert. How can a book help you? There's so many ways. And it's really amazing what Lanette reveals about the different doors that a book can open for your business. And we also talk some key parts of the self-publishing process. And you are all going to want to do this one thing that Lanette shares, whether you have plans to write a book now or not. This is a jam-packed conversation. The long game is 5 steps to creating a successful business building book. All right, welcome everybody. I am so excited for today's episode. We are talking book publishing, and there's so many things you can do with book publishing, and my guest Lanette Pottle is an expert at helping women become published authors. Welcome, Lanette.
Thanks so much for having me. I'm looking forward to our conversation.
All right, so let's just jump right in. I mean, we all know that there's a few ways to go about book publishing. You can publish on your own. You can get an established book publisher in the big city as well. This conversation is being focused on self-publishing, so to speak, or self-publishing, guided publishing, I should say, because that's something that you do, help people with the process, but they're doing it on their own.
Yeah, exactly. So I love to mentor other women in starting their own publishing imprint, because you can publish yourself professionally, and it doesn't take a lot of extra work to create an imprint. So that's part of what I focus on, and I just love the result.
Yeah, and that's, I love that you put the word professionally in there, because you can now publish yourself, and it's not just, it's the same end product. You're getting that same result in terms of quality and look and feel.
Yeah, exactly. So, truthfully, most anyone can go on to Amazon, publish a book themselves. It doesn't mean that it's going to be professionally self-published, right? So professionally, in my mind, when I think about self-publishing or indie publishing, you should be able to hold up your book that you've published yourself versus something by Random House, for instance, and to be able to not really tell the difference between the two, like as far as the publishing, that's standard. So someone that you learn the standards, you work with professionals, you work with professional editors and book designers and formatters, and you can do all of that yourself. And by the way, you can get to market so much more quickly, which is why I love to use that as a process, because I'm working with female speakers, coaches, and entrepreneurs, and speed to market is important when you're looking at using your book as a business builder, particularly.
Yeah, and let's talk about that. What are some of the benefits? Like, how can you use a book? It's so much work. I mean, even with someone who knows the process and you're being mentored through the process, which thank you for offering that service to people, but it's still a lot of work. So let's talk about, like, what are some of the benefits? Walk us through some of the benefits of becoming a published author. How can you really use this to propel your business and your brand, so to speak?
Yeah. So, something magical happens, and I can't quite quantify this, but when you become a published author, it is an automatic, just innate authority builder. Your credibility changes with people. Their perspective of who you are and your level of expertise changes the minute you become a published author. And so just
Interesting. Just
right, right. It's like it's hard
you
to
stand a little
quantify.
taller. You
But it's a confidence booster for you also, because once you've done
totally.
that, yeah, like it is doing a hard thing, and we can do hard things. We do hard things all the time. And why not do something that maybe is going to take that extra bit of effort? But a book is for as long as you want it to be. You can say a book is forever, but maybe you don't want it to be forever. That's one of the nice things too about if you're publishing your own work, you get to decide, is it time for a new version of it? Is it time to take it down? Like you have all the control over that. But also benefits, business building benefits, okay, your credibility, your authority, but it's such a door opener. Like you get invited to conversations and to sit at tables that were not available to you before. And I hear it again and again. Like I've experienced it personally, but with my clients and with just other women that I know that have published, it's the same story that you hear over and over. Like, I can't believe, I got this invitation, that invitation. Maybe it's collaboration, being able to,
Mhm.
that's
And I just
exactly,
always want to say on that point, I
yeah,
don't think people are collaborating enough. Like they are not.
yes.
Like, that is such a value that I'm always trying to impart on my clients, that collaboration and partnership opportunities, use that
Oh my
vehicle.
gosh. Yes, you are speaking my language for sure. And that has been the case with April and I with the authors program. So those that maybe have met April Adams Pertwee, she is the Light Beamers, and together we collaborated with a book program, an authors program, and doing collaborative books, a series of collaborative books. That would have never happened had I not been first a published author, right? And I bring a level of expertise, and April brings a level of expertise. She's an expert storyteller. I mean, match made in heaven. We have the same kind of values and how we show up. So that happened. And April and I knew each other for a long time before that happened, but that was the connector. It's like, okay, this is the perfect time. And those kinds of things happen. So, I mean, it's new revenue streams. It's, new products. It's so many things if you step into it and if you own it. And we'll talk, I think, probably a little bit more about that later, but that's the big thing. It's like, don't do all of this work and then keep it to yourself. That's one of the
Totally.
big
Well,
things that I see.
totally. And that gives you so many PR
Oh
opportunities
my
to
gosh,
launch
yes.
off of as well, right? Like, I know we'll talk later on about this, but the sharing of the process and all of that, that gives you something to talk about along the way. And of
Absolutely.
course, once it's released, you're out there and you're able to market yourself through that.
Yeah, it's great. Like it's such there's so many things that you can talk about, and you just have, so for instance, my book isn't my latest book is about well-being. Okay, it's not about publishing, but it opens the
Right. Right.
doors to a lot of conversation. It is about my value system and things, I'm a fierce advocate for well-being, so it gives me one more angle to open conversations. Yeah, it's a good thing.
And I love that point because we can be an expert in one thing and an expert in something else, right? Like it
Yes.
doesn't lock you into, oh, just this one lane. I love that you brought that up because we all have stories to tell and experience to share, that a book is a great vehicle to do that as well.
Absolutely, absolutely. And then if you're using it for your business, it is being intentional. Maybe it's a new market that you want to go into. Maybe you want to start a new coaching program. Maybe you want to start speaking on stages about something that you're really passionate about. So that's a way to kind of make that subtle shift without, it isn't abandoning everything that you stand for in your business. It's just one, it's like an offshoot of it.
All right, well, let's talk some actionable steps. All
Yeah.
right. Like this is really about, hey, if you've, you know, and I know I just want to tell everyone, all of the audience, that we're going to link to a freebie from Lanette that is how to choose the topic, how to
Yeah.
choose the topic of your book, because that's always a huge question to start with. What do I write about, right?
Yeah, because, and this is what I see a lot in here in conversations is like, I've done a lot of living. There's so many things that I could write about. I have expertise in a number of areas. Like, how do I know where to start? And too many people allow that to be the stumbling block. Like, oh, I'm not sure which one to choose, so I'm going to not choose any. And this tool will help
Right,
you
right.
choose the best idea for you right now, where you are right now, and it'll help you in 5 minutes or less. So it's like, okay, let's go into action. I'm all about intentional action.
Yeah, love that. So that'll be in the show notes, a link to that for everyone who's listening. Go check that out. Okay, so, let's talk about, you've got the idea now, right?
Yep.
You kind of know where are you going from there? Like, it is, what do you write about, but who are you writing for? All of those pieces, right? You've got to consider.
Oh my gosh, yes, it's so important because like we're passionate about our topic, whatever it is that we want to write about. And that's typically where we start is like, what is it that I want to write about? When in truth, what is important to think about first is what does your ideal client, what is their problem? What are they looking for? What do you
Hmm.
solve? So it's just like the same questions you're asking when you're building your business and deciding on your
Yep.
offerings, you're bringing that to your book. And of course, you still get to write about what you want to write about, but it helps you come at it from the right perspective so that you can meet the client where they're at. It's all about solving that problem for them.
Yeah, and I think that's really important because sometimes we come to it with, we have our story, we have our experience
Yep.
first,
Yep.
and that's a part of it, right? Like obviously, a book is sprinkled with stories and all of that, but you've also got to think about the message in it.
Yes. And it is kind of starting the worst advice, and you hear this all the time, like it makes me cringe, is like, oh, you want to write a book? Just start writing. It's like, no, that is the worst thing you can do. Yes, I'm all for having a writing practice. If you want to have a
Right, right,
writing
right.
practice and write in a journal, but if you want to create a book, you need to think about where that start to finish. What is it that you
Hmm.
want your reader to have at the end of that book? What knowledge do you want them to have? Skill, next action. What is the next action that you want them to take when they're done reading the book? Because that is
Oh, that's
going to
interesting.
influence the whole process. If you don't have that, you've just got a bunch of words on paper and you probably don't even end up with a book. Only 3% of people, and there's 81% of Americans who say they want to write a book, only 3% ever do. And it's things like this that get people tripped up.
Right. Well, it's, again, back to the big endeavor. It's such a
Yeah.
process. And once you even start writing, it, for those people who start writing without the path,
Yep.
or a mentor to help them along the way, that leads them to nowhere, right? Like when you just write
Yes.
the stories, it's like, well, what's the point? They haven't thought about the other piece, which is really what's valuable about the service that you offer, is that you're helping people make those connections between their own experience and their stories and their audience. Like you're helping weave that thread throughout.
Exactly. And the personal stories are important. Sometimes people, I do find some clients when we first start working together that they are focused more on like in that how-to vein, and it's more like a lecture,
Mm.
right? That's where it starts. And so remembering it isn't abandoning your stories. Your stories is that's the thing that's going to connect you to that reader. That might be the first introduction that someone has to you, and that's where you're building your know, like, trust, right? It's through your personal stories and being vulnerable enough to allow yourself to show up on those pages too. So you do want to sprinkle it in. You're not abandoning it, but you're being very intentional about
Right.
why you're sharing the story that you're sharing.
Right. And how it relates.
Yeah.
because I know that for myself, I've started on a journey of just even starting to write more and pull my
Hmm.
stories together, and it's so easy to go off on a tangent, right? You can
It
think
is.
about these stories, how they're interrelated, and all of a sudden I'm like, and blah 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 blah, and it has, you've really got to almost go through them and then edit as well, really pull back to see what like you said, using that word intention, you have to be intentional about what you're sharing.
Yeah. So I'm a big advocate of creating a story bank, which is more like think about
Mm.
maybe like a bullet journal.
Ooh,
Right? It's just like maybe a
right.
highlight. It's that one line of a story, just enough to spark an idea. And you capture these. And then when you're ready to write your book or a blog or whatever it is that you're going to write and you want a story to support that, you can look through that list and see what maybe connects that makes sense that you can tie in a lesson or
Mm.
something versus like, I mean, most people I have stories that I just love to tell because they're freaking fun stories to tell, right? Um, but they don't serve the reader unless it's like once in a while it does, but rarely does it connect to that bigger message. So you have to be careful about which ones you're selecting, and having that story bank to pull from is a shortcut, is really the way that I look at it. So when you sit down and you're starting to do your organizing for your book, it makes it so much easier to look through that list and start to work
Hmm.
from there.
That is a great piece of advice because we all know things come to us at different times.
Yep.
Ideas come at different times, and you'll sit down and be like, "What was that? Or I totally forget that," and then think of it 10 days later after you've already written or spent time. So
Yes.
that's a really, really good actionable step for everyone to be taking.
Yeah. And
Um,
whether
all right, what's
today, I was going to say, even if you're not thinking about writing a book like in the next 6 months, like still do it. There will be
the other?
purpose. I'm imagining everyone listening to this podcast is a content creator in some way, shape, or form. And that story
Definitely.
bank is going to serve you in that same way. So it's a good investment of time, no matter how you use it. Like go get a bullet journal and start doing that today. I think that's a great, like, if there's only one takeaway today, do that. Start there.
Yeah, that's really a great piece of advice. I know that you have mentioned to me previously that you, in the books as well, like to provide and reference resources. Like that is a little bit of a twist on things. So, talk to us about that concept.
Yeah, and this is really specific, I think, for the people that I serve, the clients that I serve, because it is about a business builder. It isn't just about
Hmm.
a memoir or a nice story to read. There's a business purpose behind it. And part of what we need to do is strip away, like sometimes we think we have to put everything we know about a topic into a book, which is very, that's untrue. That's fiction. Uh, but having the resource, like something additional, like giving people enough, you're meeting them where they're at, you're not overwhelming them, you're giving them another piece of information that they can go to if they want to learn more. And of course, that's also serving the purpose as a lead generator, because you're going to have something set up on the back end, an opt in that people can get on your subscriber list, and you can continue to nurture them and provide them value and lead them into your funnels. So it's very intentional. It's also, I'm a huge believer in, it's not just about, like, again, talk about cringeworthy things. I have picked up books before where it's so sleazy the way that people put in their links and all of this. It's
Hmm.
like it's not serving the reader. It's clearly just for the purpose of collecting people's information. And I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about, where does it flow naturally to be able to provide more information, to be able to serve. So if you come from that place of service, how can you serve? Then when they do get that resource and are on your list, you've also built more trust, because they know when you say you're going to provide something that's going to help them, you deliver on what you say. So that's a really important thing.
Definitely. And I have had books, I've purchased books from business authors who have done that. And I always go back to the website and check out what
Yep.
their piece is. And, that is it's an extension of what you're learning there as well. Plus, I love that that can be updated. Obviously, we know a
Yes.
printed book is, kind of bound, so to speak, and that resource can always be kept up to date. You can even update it annually and mark it for people, on the top that this is the latest version of this. So, it's something that can be more interactive and really engage your reader in a different way, especially when you're talking about a process. Like, I
Yes.
love that whole concept.
Yeah. And it's also fun to be able to start infusing some of those things, might be infusing some video. So again, that's
Hmm.
another level of connection that you meet people in a different way than you do on the written page. And to your point about updating, you can update a book, but there's a process involved in that. Whereas a website, it's much quicker, more nimble to be able to change that. And to your point of like the annual, like that's a really great, maybe somebody's been on your list for a long time, right? Continuing to nurture them, providing that's one more reason to reach out to them. So it all flows together. It is the long game. Like when you're thinking about how you're going to leverage your book for your business to be a business builder, that's the way that you need to think. It isn't the quick fix. It's about an investment in the long game and how that you can continue to attract and nurture and identify new clients, people that want your service, that are ready to purchase from you, and that you can serve it because it's your ideal client. That's how you built everything out.
And you had mentioned earlier when we were talking about some of those opportunities, like, that you can incorporate, you can use the book to promote your signature offers and things like that. Like, talk to us a little bit about how inside of the book you're doing
Yes.
that. Like, what are the ways? I mean, when, I know when we're talking about speaking, we say things like, oh, with my clients, I do X, right? Or so talk to us about using that book. And it builds on what you were just saying about promoting and having the audience work with you.
Yeah, so some of it, like you just mentioned, can be the language that you use. You don't have to be overt and go into deep details. It's just when you say the word client, work with my clients, that identifies to people that, okay, this is the way that you work with people. Great. Maybe I'd like to work with you in that way. So it
Right.
can be as simple and subtle as that. But one of the things about a book, when you are creating your own book, when you're publishing your own book, also is the way that you use the back matter. And the back matter, if that's a new term, is
Yes.
that's the pages at the end of the book that where you can put like, oh, want to invite Sandra to speak to your group? Here's how you can do it. Or here's my signature
Mm.
program. Learn more. You can include things like how to follow you on social. So all of these like next step types of things are at the end of the book, because if you've done a great job with your book, I guarantee you there are going to be people that want to know, what is the next step? How can I work with this person? Not everyone. That's great. You don't
Right.
need to work with everyone, but there will be a percentage of people that do. So you want to make that path very clear and easy for them. And again, it doesn't feel sleazy. It's just of service. Like, here's ways that I can continue to
100%.
help you.
Yeah, I always say you've got to answer the question, what's next? And if you
Yes.
don't, you're leaving something, the relationship on the table,
Yep.
right? You're
Yep.
not, that's how you continue the relationship.
100%.
And like you said, it might not be for everyone, but it's there for those who want to take the next step.
And I'm sure you found this yourself. Like when I read books, there's some books that like in the moment, maybe there's not something that I do need to continue further, but I change, I evolve, my needs and change, and I go back to that resource and I find something that wasn't there for me before. I wasn't ready to receive it, or I just didn't see it. So that's the other nice thing about having that type of invitation in the back matter, is maybe it's 3 months from now, maybe it's not when the book's
Mhm.
released, but it still continues to give people that invitation to say, come on over, like let's continue to talk.
Definitely. And because you're leading them to your website, most likely, or to something like that, if you have new offers and new opportunities to work with you, those can be seen as well. So,
Yes.
you can always keep building upon that.
Yep.
All right. So let's talk about book promotion, right? Because
Yes.
you've done the hard work. That's always it. Here we are. Okay, people, I built it. Come. So,
Yeah.
talk to us about, promoting your book. And I alluded to this in the beginning
Mhm.
too, that, I know that you like to have people follow the process with you. So, let's
Yes.
talk about all of it.
Yeah, and there's so much to talk about here because
Take a deep breath, lean back for a second.
oh my gosh, there's so much to talk about here. Because the truth is, like, writing a book is work, right? And it can feel like you finish the book is like, boom, like I feel good. I finished the book. You're really proud of that, as you should be, and you should celebrate. And nothing breaks my heart more than someone that has put in all this time, energy, and effort into creating this beautiful piece of work, and it's like a whisper quiet launch. Like they
Mhm.
just put it out into the world and never tell anybody about it, thinking that like magically somehow it's going to become a bestseller and in everybody's hands, and it just doesn't work that way. Most people I find that are going through this process, or the women that I work with, many of them, promotion, it takes a little bit of mindset work to get there, right? It isn't something that comes
Mhm.
naturally. It's one thing to promote other people. We rally behind other women. Yes, we're all about that. But when it's turning the tables to say, here's something that I have to offer, it can feel vulnerable. It can feel like, oh,
Mhm.
I'm not sure I want to do that. And by the way, maybe somebody's going to be judging me and now thinking I'm not the expert that they thought I was before. We tell all of these stories. So, one of the ways that we work around that is it's twofold. So one is, like you mentioned, is being able to, so we know 81% of Americans want to write a book. So
That's a
probably, right? Isn't that huge?
huge
Most people
number.
think that they have a book in them. And so what happens is that that's why people are super interested in the process. Like, and before I wrote a book, I was one of those people. It's like, oh my gosh, like you live vicariously through this other person that's doing the thing that you dream of doing. So by bringing people step by step along the way of like, oh, okay, this is where I'm at, or I talked to my editor today, or oh, I'm working on the book cover design, like every single step of the way, people are interested in that, but also you're building intrigue and curiosity and really getting your audience ready to purchase the book when it's ready. They're going to champion you. You're going to share. Like I encourage people to share the ups and the downs. It's not just about this glossy Instagram kind of representation of what it
Mhm.
is to write a book. Hell no. Like it's the whole thing. It's like, this was really challenging for me today. Or you know what? I almost threw in the towel. Talk about those things. Be real, show up. So that's in service to people that are watching you, but it's also going to help you when it's time to start promoting the book, start to feel more comfortable about it because you've taken all of these little steps along the way to inform
Right.
people about what you're doing. So it doesn't feel
And
so like out of the blue.
right. Well, that's what I was just going to say. It's not the first time your audience is hearing,
Right.
hey, I've got this book, right?
Yes.
They know that there's been an idea 8 months ago, and you've dropped
Mhm.
these little breadcrumbs along the way for them to follow along. So it's natural that the launch is coming and
Yes.
you're building up excitement and momentum for that launch. So, that's even a great uh, concept for everyone to take away for whatever they're doing,
Yeah.
right? Like we love the behind the scenes, whatever you're working on, like let people into what you're doing and what your work is. I mean, I still find I've been doing my work for 12 years. And
Right.
sometimes people will be like, what is it that you do? And I'm like, how do you not know what I do? Like we're friends on Facebook or whatever, right? But like that's just it. You have to keep talking about what you do.
Yes. And be willing to show up in the messy too. I do think that's really important because it makes you human. And
Mhm.
it gives people permission to know that they don't have to be perfect to do this thing either. I think it's a really important thing.
Yeah, I that right there alone, mic drop. That's the second thing you can take away from this conversation. Story bank and messy.
Yeah.
um, okay, so we're talked about along the way and getting to your launch. What else are you doing in promotion?
Oh my gosh. So, right, one of the things that you can do is really starting to build. So, you have all these people that are invested in what you're doing. And part of what you want
Right.
to do with promotion, especially when launch, is gathering a group of people to help support you in that launch. So, creating a launch team. These are all things that you can do. And it's a little more detailed than just kind of high level that we're talking about, but I'm dropping these
Right.
things
Of
just to
course.
plant seeds to say you don't have to do it alone, but you do have to lead the charge. No one is going to champion you in the way that you champion yourself. People are going to follow your lead. The way you talk about your book, that's how other people are going to talk about your book. So it's really important to start building that comfort level and to lead the way and let people know how can they support you. A launch team is one of those really important ways. And I'll tell you, with every book that I've launched, and kind of funny right now, I'm getting ready to launch. I'm getting ready to launch a book for my 10-year-old granddaughter, and we're doing
I've
the
been, oh,
same exact thing for her. And I don't do children's books. Yeah, that's not my lane. Personal development, self-help, and inspiration is my lane. But when your 10-year-old granddaughter comes to you, you do the thing. But we're doing the same exact thing for her. Is we're sharing information about the book. We've shared along the way. Every single thing that I'm talking about, she's doing as a 10-year-old, she's doing as well. And obviously, I'm supporting her in that. But we've built a launch team. And so people are sharing the same message we're sharing and getting people excited to buy her book. So it doesn't matter what kind of book you have. It doesn't matter how old you are. It doesn't matter if it's your first book or your 10th book. The process is still the same. Use other people's energy and networks to support you, people that are
mhm.
in alignment with what you're doing, and tap into those and be willing to ask for the help, right? I think that's a big thing, especially
Oh,
with women.
definitely.
Like asking for help isn't always the most comfortable thing.
And that's a really good tip because if in terms of building the team, you can go wider with
Yes.
a larger network. And those people are your community. They're the ones who are going to buy a book from you. They're the ones who are going to tell their friend. So give them the tools. I mean, I think in this too,
Yes.
it's just a little bit of forethought. What are the tools they need? Because someone might
Hmm.
be listening to this and say, oh, that sounds like a whole thing to organize. And yes, you can make anything as big as it can be, but just even thinking about, oh, here's a post that they can put up to share, like
Yes.
giving them the tool to be able to help you are that's a really great way to expand the message and get it out there at launch. That's a really great tip, building the team.
Yeah. Yeah. And you
It's
can.
funny because, oh, I was going to say, back in the day when I worked in the fashion industry, I worked with a lot of hip hop clothing brands and skateboarding brands, and we had street
Fun.
teams, and that
Yes.
was that was the whole thing. Like, get them dressed up, get them gear to give away, get them stickers. When you see the stickers on the freeway or on the lampposts in the city, and that was their whole job, was to go out and rally different groups of people in different communities to kind of get behind this brand. So I love that this is a modern day take on what I was doing in the 90s.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, it's not a new concept. It's applying it in a new way and really using
Definitely.
and the other thing is people that already know, like, and trust you love the invitation to help and to support. And there are ways for every one of my launch teams that I'm involved with. The people that join are also curious about the process. So you give them behind the scenes information that no one else has access to, right? It's a win-win. So it can be a
Super
really beautiful
smart.
thing. And that could be a whole episode of itself. I get really passionate about that. So I'm going to take a breath.
Think of it, let it go, like let it go. Well, that's the whole thing, is that each one of these concepts is its own area that you can dive into, but
Yes.
it's about getting exposed to those ideas, right? And but that's also why we seek out experts like yourself when we're
Right.
doing things, because you've got the process set up. It's so much easier to step into an established process and let yourself be guided in that process, than try and think about it for yourself. And these type of conversations are just awakening people to say, yeah, I can do this. I want to do this. I've had this idea, and yeah, I can do all those things, right?
Yes,
I can work
yes.
with someone to do all those things. So, but that's really the importance of finding mentors and working with experts like yourself in processes like this.
Yeah, and whether it's a book or something else, I mean, that is the truth. You are the expert in your zone of genius. You don't have to
Totally.
be the expert in everything. So when it comes to like how do I write the book? How do I get started? Work with a book coach. If it's publishing, work with a publishing mentor. If it's an online course, work with someone that's an expert at online courses. You don't have to be the expert at everything. And you'll learn along the way, absolutely. And bonus when it's something that you learned once and then you can repeat on your own in the future. I mean, that's the best of the best, right? But know that you are already part of a community. Being here, knowing Sandra, now knowing myself, all of the guests that she has on the show, you have a network. You know people that can support
Mhm.
you in doing the thing that you want to do. Don't allow the fact that you don't know how to do it yet hold you back from this really valuable next step in your business.
Definitely. And I love that point because we tend to get overwhelmed with the process of
Yeah,
everything.
yeah.
And you don't have to be an expert in everything, right? And I believe that when you do go with an expert, a guide, a mentor, you can enjoy the process more. It
Oh,
takes
yes.
some of that pressure off of, I have to think of what the next step is, or I have to know. And you can enjoy the process because you're able to be creative and able to flow a little bit more and
Mhm.
say, ah, Lynette's going to tell me what to do next. I'm going to hand this in, and then we're going to go through the next piece. I don't have to think of it.
Yeah, it's such a relief to be able to know that, like, okay, we've done the big picture visioning. Now all I need to focus on is the next step. And if I keep following
Yep.
this next step, I know I'm going to get to where I need to be because Lynette or Sandra or whoever my mentor or guide or coach is, they've got my back. They're not going to let me get so far off course that I'm spending a bunch of time, energy, money, frustration on things that I don't need to be spending it on, right? So that is the value in working with someone that's been down the path and tap into their zone of genius to make your journey a little bit more enjoyable.
Yeah, definitely. And I want to thank you so much for coming on today and sharing all of this with us because like you said, 81% of the people, I mean
Yes.
that's my audience who probably want to be writing a book and don't know even some of the first steps, right? There's
Mhm.
different ways to go about this because I know one of the things people say holding them back is, "Oh, I don't have the audience," or "I don't have the idea." But those are all things that can be addressed and you can do this. You can
Yes.
build that audience. You can create that idea. Go to Lynette's website. Again, we have the link in the show notes where you can download her PDF on generating that idea, creating that idea for yourself. So, if that's something that has been on your list of things to do, go check out Lanette Pottle at LynettePottle.com. And thank you so much, Lynette, for coming on today and sharing with us, exposing us to all of these ideas and to the process.
Oh my gosh, I've loved our conversation. Thanks so much for having me.
All right, everybody, we'll see you next week. Thanks for joining me today. You can access more information, links mentioned in this episode, and the show notes at thelonggamepodcast.net. If today's show connected with you in some way, please share it with your friends or hop on and leave a review. Both of these make a really big difference. All right, until next time, keep playing the long game.